Good morning. And am I muted? I am not, thank goodness. Welcome to 1 Million Cups here on Wednesday, 9/11. Next slide, please. So 1 Million Cups is sponsored by the Kauffman Foundation, and they're working with communities to increase opportunities and allow people to take risks and own their successes, particularly entrepreneurs and small business owners. We have two visitors this morning, and I just realized I'm on half a cup of coffee and didn't introduce myself. I'm Amy Hughes, and I own 48 Blocks Fine Candy. So our visitors, Beth and Casey. Beth, would you introduce yourself, your company, and how you heard about us?
Yeah, my name is Beth Broyles. My company name is BB Organizing. I'm a professional organizer, and I heard about 1 Million Cups through Amy.
And Casey, I believe you're new.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. My name is Casey Siswath with Siswath Insurance Solutions. I'm a multi-line insurance agent specializing in your commercial, life insurance, and personal lines insurance with multiple
And
carriers.
beautiful, thank you. And how did you hear about us?
Through other networking outlets.
Terrific. Maria, I know we sat next to each other last week, but would you introduce yourself to the group?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Maria Gation. I am a certified interior designer. I'm doing residential and small commercial projects.
And how did you hear about us?
Through the Women Business Center and all the, I don't remember how exactly I got here, but it's through all their resources and hopping to several ones until I found you guys.
Beautiful. Two more. Nguyen.
Hello, my name is Nguyen. I'm a serious entrepreneur. I own an aquarium fish store and also a gelato business. And I'm in Fairfax, Virginia. Um, and I know I learned about this is from US, DC the platform, and then I've been trying to join, but not today's my first time.
Terrific. And I think one more, Marianne.
Hey, I'm Marianne Clyde. I'm the CEO of Isn't She Amazing? It's a platform that encourages women over 50 to live their brightest and most exciting life. And I heard of you through John Rutenberg.
Wonderful. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So you'll see a lovely QR code on this slide. If you will, I was going to say mouse over that because again, half caffeinated. If you will take a shot of that QR code with your camera, that'll allow you to check in, all of us, not just the new folks, but all of us, to check in and get credit for attendance at the meeting. And so 1 Million Cups knows that the Fairfax group is actually active and alive. I'll give you a minute for that. And if you miss it, if maybe your phone's not working like mine is not this morning, you can always check in later when you get the follow-up email from the meeting.
You know what? I think I actually checked in with the Loudon meeting this morning.
Oh, well, you can check in again with us. It's okay.
So I'm at two meetings at one time.
Double credit. So meetings like this don't happen without some folks working in the background. And these are our organizers as well as brand ambassadors. You can reach out to any of them with questions, any of us with questions. I forgot my picture was up there. We also have some community groups that we partner with, including Veterans Growing America and then Fairfax Economic Development Authority. Both of the groups have good resources, provide a lot of information, and give us the opportunity to support the education component of 1 Million Cups. So we have a national and local mission. And I've got 3 helicopters flying over me right now. So national and local mission, every week at 9 a.m., no matter what time zone you're in, entrepreneurs are meeting together to learn from each other, and also share their unique value propositions and stories about their businesses. I find it to be a very engaged group and an interesting way to spend my Wednesday morning. So if you have a time slot free on your calendar, we welcome you to join us each week. This is the slide I call the creative differentiator slide, because it's very different from any other networking group that I've been a part of. We don't pitch. Everything's its own unique presentation about one entrepreneur story on any given week. It's not networking. It is designed to develop authentic connections and relationships, per the Kauffman Foundation, run for the community and by the community. So there are individual chapters around the country, each with its own unique voice and unique spin. And my favorite piece of this, it's radically and intentionally inclusive. No matter where you are on the entrepreneurial journey, there is a place for you here, no matter how large, no matter how small. Our sponsors this week, for Jen, can you talk about the Mason Enterprise Center, please?
Happy to. Thank you so much, Amy. So the Mason Enterprise Center is our space sponsor. That means the first Wednesday of every month, we are hybrid. So we meet virtually, and we also meet at the Mason Enterprise Center's training room, which is at Eaton Place, just near 66. So we'd love for you to join us that first Wednesday in October. Mason Enterprise Center has office space there that you can be a virtual member and get access to their mentors. You can also have an office space there. They have meeting rooms. If you have a board that you need to meet with or clients you need to meet with, it's a great space. What makes them unique is their dedicated mentors. They also partner with SBDC and they partner with ICAP, so commercializing products and solutions into the DMV. They have what's called a soft landings program. So they also partner with companies who are coming from out of country and want to launch into the US. So fantastic resource. Who you should reach out to there is Eddie Hill. He's a really great collaborator and partner and can help you really access the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Northern Virginia. You do not have to be a George Mason alum. It is open to anybody. Do check it out. And again, if you are a business owner who's looking for space to do talks, workshops, presentations, they have all of those resources and more at MEC. So with that, I don't think Alex is able to join us this morning, but I will tee up Alex Mattini. His company is Franchise Select. So he works with individuals to help them understand if a franchise is the opportunity they want to pursue, what the different franchises are, and really what works best for that individual and the goals they have, how they want to operate, the time they have, the constraints they might have, or the opportunities they want to pursue. So if you want to learn more about potentially having a franchise, reach out to Alex Mattini. He is happy just to talk with you, give you insights and advice. You can see his website here, franchiseselect.com. And again, these are both of our sponsors. Coffee sponsor changes every month. I believe we do have an October sponsor already and November. So if you want to get on the action in December, let us know, because the coffee sponsor is a hot spot. So anyways, thank you again for joining us. And I'm going to hand it back over to Amy.
Thank you, Jen. And I forget where we go next. So there we go. How our meetings work. So there is a chat option within Zoom. I think we're all pretty familiar with that chat option. We welcome you to share who you are and your contact information in there. So we can save the chat at the end of the session, and we have all our contact information to be able to follow up and connect for longer conversations, or maybe to share some additional information. So if you will put that in the chat, that would be great. Also, it's a great place to put comments and questions. Sometimes we go a little off. I was going to say off the reservation, which is completely not PC. Sometimes we go a little off topic. So we can get going in there within the comments with our questions. And it's always a good way. Then we can, again, when we check back at the end, you can save the chat before you leave the meeting. There are 3 dots at the top of the chat window. If you click on there, it'll give you the prompt to save the chat. And as always, we encourage you to set up more conversations with folks who are interesting to you or folks who you have more questions for. So we recommend that you mute your microphone when you're not actively speaking. I don't know about anybody else, but I have a small dog that likes to be the mayor of the street. He sometimes offers conversation that nobody else wants. So if you mute your microphone, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers as we're going through the session today. Conversation best practices. We know we're all maybe not grown-ups, but we know how to behave in meetings, but sometimes we get too excited and we forget to preface things. And so rather than just saying, no, I think that's wrong, which I try not to say, but prefacing things, I have a slightly different perspective, just showing respect for each other during the open discussion is always appreciated. Asking for additional context is something that's always helpful, or I find it to be super helpful because sometimes my question is just completely out of context. And the presenter today is Curtis Dent. We had an opportunity when we were talking about planning for this meeting, what the topic should be, if we were going to do this as a town hall or do this with a presenter. Curtis, welcome to 1 Million Cups. I'm looking forward to the insights that you have related to hiring, retention, and HR.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much. When Jen Dalton invited me to speak today, the first thing that popped up is that the time was available on my calendar. And I, after the fact, remembered why the time was available, though. Today is September 11th, and that is the memorial of 9/11. My office building is Vallow Park in Tysons, and one of the tenants in my building is the Airline Pilots Association. And the Airline Pilots Association unfortunately lost 4 crews during the 9/11 attack. And so they have a memorial set up out in front of our building that you can drive by and you can walk up and look at. It's a beautiful memorial in front of the parking garage to memorialize 9/11. And on this morning, they have pilots come in and crews come in from all over the country for a ceremony to start this day. So I normally attend that, but I can still go by and give my respects afterwards. So today is a day of remembrance for sure. I am going to talk today about human resources, which is not a small thing. It's a very big thing. There's no way to talk about it in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of areas and just help you bring awareness to some things to think about. I have been working in business consulting for more than 30 years. Like Casey, I started in commercial insurance. I started in commercial general liability, auto, workers' comp coverage. And I'll tell us a brief story from 1995. I handled, and speaking of Alex Mattini, who handles franchise programs, I handled a business liability program for a small local franchise of about 35 locations. This particular franchise, each location had about 25 employees. And I received a phone call one day from the franchisor saying that health insurance is killing our franchise. the cost of health insurance, and this is 25 years ago, the cost of health insurance is killing our franchise, and there must be some way that we can pool together as individual businesses to buy group health insurance. And the answer was no. And the reason is because each of these individual businesses, they file their payroll taxes under their own federal tax ID number. And when you file payroll taxes under separate federal tax ID numbers, you don't have the ability to pool for employee benefits. So no wasn't a very good answer. And they figured out how to deal with higher health insurance costs for their teams. Now, about 5 years after that, I had a gentleman walk into my office and say, I have a special program where I pool contractors together for one workers' comp program. And I was thinking, how on earth do you do that? And the way they did it is they would run the payroll for all of these contractors under one federal tax ID number. And that made all of them eligible to be on the same workers' comp policy. What a great idea. And that one meeting was what started my transition into human capital management and working on the HR side of the business. So a couple of things. Number one, most problems that businesses have are preventable, right? And most of the things that I'm going to talk about today, if not all of the things, are things that each of us already know. We already know these things, but we procrastinate. Procrastination is the reason that we get in trouble most of the time on the human resources side of the business. We just put things off a little longer than they should be put off, and they become problems. So if I am here to do anything, it's to help you eliminate a little bit of procrastination. Now, Jen talked with me about the time of the year. This is the time of the year that people are doing 2025 planning. We're looking forward to next year. Maybe we're looking at doing employee reviews before the end of the year. A lot of people have benefits renewals that are coming up end of year, workers' comp renews end of year. Things like the 401k contributions, flexible spending accounts, HSA accounts, all of those decisions are going to be made in the next few months leading into 2024 or 2025, actually. And so now's the time to start talking about it so that we avoid putting it off until the last minute. We're going to avoid procrastination. Now, I want to start today by mentioning 4 companies. And I will say in advance that we're probably all very familiar with 3 of these companies. The first one is Walmart. We all know who Walmart is and what they do. Delta Airlines is a company that we all know. We all know what they do. Coca-Cola, we all know what Coca-Cola does. And the 4th company is Insperity. Now, not very many people know who Insperity is. And the reason that I mention these 4 companies together is because these 4 companies are the 4 largest clients of United Healthcare nationally. The 4 largest clients of United Healthcare nationally. And we're all very familiar with 3 of those companies, but who on earth is Insperity? And why are they such a big account with United Healthcare? And the thing to know about Insperity is they pool 12,000 companies across the country, more than 300,000 employees on a single United Healthcare medical plan. And that is a significant piece of business for United Healthcare. That helps a lot of small businesses find a way to have economies of scale when they're looking at their employee benefits and their payroll administration and their 401k. And so I only bring that up so that you have awareness. And let's go ahead and talk about what is a PEO for just a minute. And this isn't to sell Insperity. This is just to make you aware of what a professional employer organization is. A professional employer organization is a legal construct that was designed and approved by the IRS of the United States to allow small businesses to pool together for economies of scale, to eliminate risk, and to give themselves a better opportunity in business. One of the reasons that Alex talks with people about franchise programs is because it's pretty hard to start a business and go it alone. At least if you are looking at a franchise program, you've got someone like Alex who can help you to design the infrastructure of a company so that you can keep out of trouble. You know, where do I buy the equipment? How do I learn how to operate it? How do I learn how to associate with the customers? How do I deal with problems? One of the things that doesn't come up much in a franchise type of program, though, is they don't often help on the HR side of the business. How do I run payroll? Who's going to write my employee handbook? How do I set up job descriptions and policies and procedures? And it's important to know that HR is not for the employees of a company. A lot of people think HR is, HR is here for the culture of the people. And the truth is HR, human resources, is there to protect the organization. That's why it's there. It's to make sure that the business takes care of what they need to take care of so they can stay out of court and they can keep the business moving forward to employ the people who work there. Now, I will say, when I talk to a small business, a company with 7 to 9 employees, I hear a very common thing. I have a good insurance broker that shops the market for my benefits. I pay paychecks for payroll services, probably $120, $140 a month, and I don't need HR. Now, I've heard that hundreds of times. I don't need HR. That's a small business with fewer than 10 employees. And in a lot of cases, it could be true. There's not a lot of things that you have to worry about with HR. But if I put 20 business owners together in a room that all have 7 to 9 employees, there are going to be 3 employment lawsuits going on within that group, because 20 business owners with 7 to 9 employees, that's 140, 150 employees. I guarantee you, if you walk into a business with 150 employees, they have an HR department because they have problems. You're going to have issues with hiring. You're going to have wrongful terminations, people that are unhappy about how they're being treated. This is not in my job description, right? And as those problems come up, you have to be able to take care of them. So when I look at small businesses, I refer to this as the crossed finger approach to HR. If I have 20 business owners, chances are 17 of them are not going to have a problem, and 3 of them are. So hopefully it's just not me. Hopefully I'm not the person that's going to have an HR problem. So just be aware of that. Think of yourself collectively, and how would we collectively approach solving these kind of problems? And that's one of the great things about an organization like this, is we can talk openly about problems and try to figure out just how to solve these things. So let's go ahead and go to slide 2, Jen. I like to talk about this slide as status quo, because this is what businesses are doing already. This is what you're doing today. You've got these buckets of HR. At one point in time, I was making a presentation to a group of HR people, and I was at a whiteboard, and I wrote columns on the board. The first column said human resources. The second column said employee benefits. Third column said workers' compensation and risk management. And I had an HR person stop me and say, Curtis, you've got that category for human resources on there, but this is all human resources. All of this is in my job description. Every one of these buckets is part of HR, but they're so segmented that we don't really think of them all together. And so as we go across this page, we look at recruiting, employee administration, employee benefits, training and development. How do we train our people? How do we upskill our people? Performance management. How do we do performance reviews? How do we write job description? The L for employment liability. And then lastly is compliance. I look at liability and compliance as lawsuits and fines. If you do something wrong in the employment liability category, whether it be your employee handbook, a workers' comp claim, an EPLI type of issue, you're going to get some kind of a lawsuit from an employee. If you don't take care of compliance with the government, you're going to get a fine. And so we have liability and compliance on the end of this. But what we tend to do is we have service providers that help us with each of these categories. We might have somebody that's helping us with recruiting, or we're doing it ourselves. How do we recruit? Our employee administration, we've got a payroll company. We might have a different provider doing our time and attendance. We have an accountant that's helping us with the payroll taxes. You could have 3 different service providers just on employee administration. With the employee benefits, our medical broker may not handle our 401k, right? We might have a financial advisor that does the 401k. We've got a third-party administrator or a TPA who's setting up our cafeteria plan. And maybe we're working with AFLAC or Colonial Life for voluntary benefits. We could have 4 different service providers just in benefits. And our workers' comp agent is not always our medical agent. So when we look at all of these buckets, we realize that as a small business owner, we're working with 7 to 9 different outsourced service providers, 7 to 9 different people. And I also talk to a lot of businesses who say, I don't outsource HR. I hear it all the time. I don't outsource. We do everything internally. But that same business person is working with 7 to 9 different providers. You are outsourcing HR. You are doing that because it's less expensive and you have fewer mistakes when you outsource. My insurance agency started using Paychex 25 years ago because it was cheaper to use Paychex to do the payroll. We had a better payroll person and we had fewer mistakes in payroll processing. Technology allows us to outsource. And so when we look at this, the main thing that I want you to realize here is this is what all businesses are doing. And but we don't want to compartmentalize these things. You don't want to separate these things out because what you realize, as an example, is you hire a new employee. That employee has to accept your benefits the way they are. Well, the benefits have been killing you for the last several years, so you keep increasing the deductibles and the out-of-pocket maximums. And now this new hire comes in, and what you don't know is that this new hire has a family member that's got a big medical claim going on. And so they come on your medical insurance, and this new employee starts to pay money out of pocket, and they run out of money. They come into a bind. And so they go over and they start taking money out of their 401k. To pay their medical bills. But there's not enough money in the 401k to pay the medical bills. So the next thing you know, this employee starts thinking about, should I file a workers' comp claim? Is there a way that I can fabricate something to file a workers' comp claim? But the only way they can do that is they have to say something bad about the employer. The employer provided an unsafe work environment. So the employer ends up calling the labor attorney because he doesn't want to get sued. And what you realize is all of these parts of human resources are all integrated. They all work together, but nobody talks to each other. The workers' comp broker doesn't talk to the benefits broker or the 401k. Nobody says, hey, this employee's taking money out of their 401k. Why are they doing this? Let's go talk to them. So I just want you to know, as a business owner, when you look at human resources, look at it collectively. Look at it as a way that I can solve problems on a grand scale. This is the way businesses are doing this now. You can tell from this chart that I have this as the bottom of a pyramid. You can see that these categories are all on the bottom of the pyramid. And this isn't the wrong way to do it. 9 out of 10 businesses are doing business just like this. They've got things compartmentalized. They're very good in some areas, but not very good in other areas. So next slide. This slide is busy, so I'm not going to talk about all of it, but I do want to say one thing. Back in the 70s, they referred to the 70s, the 1970s, as the hippie generation, right? And everyone has a slogan when they say hello, when they greet each other. Well, during that generation, people would say, what's happening, right? That was the phrase. You see somebody and you say, hey, what's happening? And eventually somebody comes along who's really sophisticated, though, and says, what's really happening? What are we really doing here? And a lot of times when we are running a business, we focus on those buckets from, if I do recruiting right, and if I handle employee administration right, and if I handle benefits right, then everything will work out in my business. But what are we really trying to do in business? You look at these strategic goals. We're setting goals for 2025. First goal, I want to grow my business from 10 people to 20 people as fast as possible with the least amount of risk. There's a good goal. How do I double the size of my business as fast as possible with the least amount of risk? I'm telling you, that's an important goal, but how do you do that? If you have turnover, if you're hiring 2 people and losing 1, if you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, it's hard to grow a business. If you have a turnover problem in your company, you also have risk of, what's going on with employment liability. If I'm losing people, why am I losing them? Am I at risk for some type of a lawsuit? As we go down these strategic goals for 2025, I want to improve the value of employees to the marketplace, right? The buzz now is, how can I generate more revenue per employee? How can I do that? Well, the only way I can do that is I have to upskill my people. I have to get involved in employee training and development. Somehow I have to increase the skill set of the people that I've got so that they can generate more revenue for my business. And how do I do that? I need to simplify employee administration. How do I make HR a key driver of success? Nobody thinks about that. How do I make HR a profit center in my business? It's not just the liability and compliance of HR, but how can I make HR generate more revenue for my business? Now, when we go to the bottom of this, we've got the category for budget, right? And oftentimes, as a business owner, you think of budget when it comes to your human resources as, what am I paying for this, right? But you need to break it into 3 categories. One is, what am I paying service providers? What am I paying for these services in HR? Because everything that I'm talking about is on the expense side of the ledger. It's just taking money out of the business. It's not growing revenues. So how do I minimize what I'm paying for vendors to provide this service? But I also have to pay attention to, what am I paying myself? I can walk into a law firm and say, what is your billable hour? And that person can tell me exactly what their billable hour is. You can ask your CPA, what's your billable hour? They know what their billable hour is. But I'll ask each of you as a business owner, what's your billable hour? Every hour that you spend working on employee administration, what is that costing your company? How much are you paying yourself? If you have a staff member that's doing some of these functions, how much are you paying them per hour to do this stuff? And if you realize that human resources takes up about 10 hours of time between me and my people in each month, then what's the billable hour for the 10 hours of time? So it's not just, what am I paying the service providers? It's, what am I paying myself and my team to do this type of work? And the last item is, what should I be paying, but I'm not? We're procrastinating. We're putting stuff off. We know there are things that we should do, but we wait for another day to do it. When we don't put the money towards solving a problem in advance, it often becomes a problem later. If we're not paying for it today, we're going to pay the labor attorney down the road to take care of these things. So I want you to, when you're doing your 2025 planning, think about all of these categories. So I want to pause for a moment and just say, this is status quo within the business. Does anyone have any general questions or thoughts about this so far?
I think one of the questions that will come up later, the risk associated with growing your team and hiring people and the expense, I think in some ways keeps people from growing and building a team because of the complexity you're sharing. So I know for a lot of folks in the room, as solopreneurs or as people with staff under 10, would love to get your thoughts either now or later on, how do you make that jump, or recommendations on what to consider, right? To make that first step and that first leap into growing a team as a way to grow your business.
Absolutely.
It's intimidating seeing all of these buckets, I think, for some people.
Yeah, totally. And so Jen brought this up because it's a great segue into the next slide. So let's look at the next slide. I specifically picked out this slide just for this conversation today because this is focusing on recruiting in a business. And this breaks, and so number one, the wheel on this slide represents the employee life cycle. And those are the 7 buckets that we looked at on the earlier slide, starting with recruiting. It goes into employee administration, benefits, training and development, performance management, employment liability, and compliance. Now, when we look at the top bucket for recruiting, we break it down into 4 buckets. job description development, you know, that's probably the best place to start, because the number one thing to know about an employee review, for example, you know, end of the year, you're going to do employee reviews with all of your people. You cannot do an employee review without an updated job description. You can't, because you can't compare an employee's work to a job description if the job description doesn't fit what that employee is doing. And so many small businesses either don't have job descriptions or they haven't updated them in years, because, you know, to update the to update the job descriptions, I've got to go to my labor attorney or some type of a consultant that I'm going to pay an hourly rate or a set fee to update my job descriptions. So I procrastinate. I don't update my job descriptions because I just don't want to spend the money on it right now. And because I can't do employee reviews appropriately, it doesn't help me with the people that I've got. But also, how do I recruit people if I don't have an updated job description? You know, I have to have something that I'm putting in the job description so that I can hire the right type of people. So that's important. Wage and salary surveys. How do I determine what to pay this person? I can make a guess at what I should pay someone that I'm going to hire, but how much should I pay them so that I can attract the right type of talent? And how much should I pay them so that I can hang on to that person? Because I don't want to have turnover. I want to keep people happy. And then the process review. What is the process for hiring someone? What is the process for recruiting? Who's helping me just to understand what the process is?
Hey,
And the
Curtis,
last, yes.
just a quick question. I don't mean to interrupt, but John, did you have a question you wanted to ask Curtis about this specific?
Yeah, no, specifically on the wage and salary surveys. For us small business people, could you suggest some good resources that we could tap into that would help us? Because I worry about exactly that. When I'm hiring someone for 15 hours a week, you know, to do whatever, to do X. What's a reasonable hourly part-time rate?
Yeah. And I can tell you that my company does a lot of that type of work for our clients, but we have to have special people to do that. You know, they don't let me touch that. You know, I don't have the skill set as a business advisor to talk specifically about all of the different job descriptions and the appropriate salaries that go along with those. We have clients across the country, and I can tell you, even for our own staff, the base salaries for the same position are different based on the cities that we're located, right?
Sure.
The salaries are different. The job descriptions are the same for people doing similar jobs, but location matters. And but there are so many different types of jobs. And so what I'll do as a follow-up to this training today is I'll go back to my team. I'll work through Jen to get some information back to you just in general, not only about what we do for our client companies for salary surveys, but also where do businesses go in general to find this type of information? Because, you know, I need the information. I don't need all of these things. I just need one thing. I need to know this one thing because it's part of my 2025 planning.
Thank you.
Great question, John. So I'll see if I can help you with that. And Jen, I haven't been good about watching the chat. So are there any other questions that you've seen that would be important to talk about right now?
I know Melinda has her hand raised. There aren't any other questions yet in chat, although this slide is really helpful. So if folks have questions, now's a great time to put them in chat as we sort of transition to Q&A. Melinda, go ahead.
A question I have, and I've found a lot of new businesses cannot pay the right kind of money to get the marketing and sales people they need.
Yeah.
And when you start a business, those are kinds of skills you need. I have a friend who bought a franchise for a sign business and never could afford the right sales guys. And he was the last person in the world to be able to do sales. So he eventually failed and went bankrupt. How do you prevent things like that? How do you help somebody in the very, very beginning as an entrepreneur assess their needs of where HR can really help them because of skills they may not be the best at, to bring in people that can do those kinds of services for them at the right rates?
Yeah. That's a wonderful question, and I will tell you that that is a very common thing that comes up. Earlier, I mentioned the small business owner who said, "I don't need HR," right?
Mhm.
There is a common story that's shared in the training within my own company about a business owner who, at one point in time, said to our CEO, "I don't need HR. I don't have any HR problems." And the question that came back is, okay, well, if you don't have an HR problem, what problem do you have in your business? And this person said, well, I have a sales problem. I have a sales problem. That's my problem in my business. And so the question was, well, how many salespeople do you have? Well, I have 9 salespeople. Okay. Well, knowing that you have 9 salespeople and you think that you have a sales problem, I can probably tell you, I can guess that you probably have 2 salespeople who are knocking it out of the park. They're great at their job. They do wonderfully. You probably have about 5 people who are doing okay, but they could really up their game. They could step up to that top level. And if you were being honest with yourself, you probably have a couple of people you should have already let go, right? They just are never going to meet the mark in the sales. And so what we do in human resources is we look at those top 2 people and we say, what is the makeup of those people? What is the top performer profile for the salesperson that I need to sell the product or service that we offer in our company? And we create this top performer profile. Then we take that profile back to the next 5 salespeople who are close to being top of their game. And we know that individually, each one of them has skills that they're lacking on a little bit. So now what we can do is we can go in and we can train those 5 people individually how to upskill so they can fit into that top performer profile. Then we take that same top performer profile and we go over to our recruiting and we say, hey, when we recruit new people moving forward, let's find people that fit into this top performer profile. And we're going to do things like, we'll do psychometric evaluations, Myers-Briggs testing. I mean, there are lots of tests that you can give people during the recruiting process to find out if they fit into this top performer profile. But if you think about that, what I just described to you was an HR process. We have a business problem, which is a sales problem, but it's our people in our company that get us over a hurdle. And there's an HR process that will help us overcome business problems. So that's how we took that business owner who didn't have an HR problem, they had a sales problem, but we found an HR process to solve that problem. So think about that. Are you using psychometric evaluations in your recruiting process? When you hire someone new, do you ask them some questions that go beyond the normal questions that you would ask in an interview? That's why one of the bullets on this slide is interviewing and selection training. How do we train ourselves to ask the right questions in an interview? I don't know what to ask in an interview. I just see, do I like the person? Do we get along? Okay, well, that's great. I'm going to hire you. But then 3 months down the road, I realize you can't do the job. You can't do the work. And then we start getting into a struggle about, you made promises that you could do these things and clearly you can't. I'm going to have to let you go. And then you've got that same person who's filing a wrongful termination suit against you as the employer. You discriminated against me when that person really wasn't qualified to do the job in the first place.
Hey,
So,
Curtis,
yes.
just real quick, I know Rutenberg has another follow-up question, I think.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, so just staying on that topic in the interview stage, because if you hire right, you have less problems. And it's particularly bad when you're a small company and you hire wrong.
Yeah.
You're 4 people and one of them is a rotten egg. That's a problem. So I'd love to open up to the group, get some ideas on questions people ask. I've certainly asked people about things they didn't like about past jobs. Okay. I had a kid show up in a polo shirt and Bermuda shorts once for an interview. And when he told me he didn't like uniforms, I explained to him he was out of uniform. I did it warmly and tenderly. But he came to an interview in shorts. But anyway, what are some of the questions, penetrating questions that one should ask in an interview? Anyone have good ideas?
I
I
mean,
always ask how comfortable people are working alone in terms of time management, and also how comfortable they are with managing up. Because for me, it's helpful if my employees can call me out on something that is just completely insane.
Great. I see Casey and Melinda and James.
Casey, go ahead.
I actually just had a general comment with Curtis's presentation. So I don't know if John wants to follow up with his questions first.
Oh, no,
Sure,
you
no, go
go.
ahead.
You go.
Curtis did touch on some great points in terms of HR as it relates to the insurance industry and working with your insurance agent. I was at another networking meeting where they were doing a presentation, and it was the financial planner, the CPA, and the what was it? Lawyer. And, I'm kind of sitting back and thinking, this is a great, circle of trusted advisors. However, where's the insurance agent? I think there's too many businesses out there that get the insurance because they have to, not because they understand it. And especially as a business owner, that insurance agent is a vital point to protect all those HR decisions that you're making in terms of workers' comp and the employment practices. It's very, very vital to make sure that your agent is working with you along with your CPA, especially when it comes to workers' comp time and those types of things. And there's also a lot of businesses out there that don't realize that in terms of the employment practices and the benefits that they're offering, that they can get the protection on their business owners policies for EPLI and employee benefits liability. So if they are inadvertently making bad decisions, or they fire someone inappropriately, or, they accidentally don't add that employee to the benefits, those are all things that your insurance agent can help to protect that business that you've worked so hard for. So I do think it's important, like Curtis said, to make sure that, the liability protection is also on your side and customized to fit your business.
And if I could also add to that, Casey, I think something that I learned a long time ago that's really important for all of you to understand is, and the way that I heard this from a young age was, there are three people that can put a business owner out of business with bad advice. The attorney can put you out of business with bad advice. The CPA and the insurance broker can put you out of business with bad advice. Now, what I've realized about those three people, though, is that we go to the attorney and we pay him in advance because we want the attorney to tell us what to do. Please just tell me what to do. We go to the CPA, we pay him in advance, and we say, please tell me what to do. We go to the insurance broker and we say, I'm not going to pay you in advance. I'll pay you after the fact. I want you to provide me with all of the information, and I'll make the decision myself on what I should do based on what you suggest. I'll make a decision. If I move forward with you, then I'll move forward, and then you'll get paid after the fact. And I think that's the wrong approach with the insurance broker. The person that's controlling the risk of your company, you can't look at that person as somebody to just provide me with information to make my own decision. The insurance broker is there to help you the same way the attorney or the CPA is, and you have to rely and trust that information. Even if they are getting paid after the fact, they shouldn't be viewed in the same light.
So let's keep going and let's keep the comments and questions short. We only have a few minutes left. Melinda and then James.
I quickly wanted to add some of the kinds of questions that I used to ask and when I would be interviewing look for. And some of them would be, what's a typical day like in my new job? What did I replace somebody, or is this a new position? And obviously you're asking for a job description, but if it's a new position, they may not have considered all of the types of things you may be doing. So as a consultant, when I was hired to do things, let's say marketing, and they didn't have any selling materials, and then all of a sudden they want you out there working on business development, you're not doing the job you were hired for. How do you actually make sure, if it's a new job, and the only way I can see it happening is, okay, you've got this and you're going to review me on these types of things, but I'm going to keep a list of things I'm doing so I can come back to you and you can evolve that job description or whatever it might be.
Yeah, totally agree. And I'll just say that John's question also about turnover comes into play with this. As a small business, sometimes we develop job descriptions based on what we need people to do. In a small business, everyone is the salesperson, everyone is the account manager, everyone is the receptionist, right? It's all hands on deck, depending on what the need of the day is. As the organization grows, then we can simplify job descriptions more specifically. But I think the key thing that John brought up is turnover. If we have 4 people and we lose one of the things that we don't realize in a small business is just how expensive turnover is. I mean, it's the most expensive thing that can happen in your business. And they say that from the time that an employee becomes disgruntled and they start complaining and their productivity drops and they start affecting people around them, till they're terminated, and then you don't have the person working there, and that now you're spending your time covering their job and you're recruiting, and then you hire somebody new and you have to train that person until they can start generating the revenue for the business. It takes a full year for one turnover, and that's expensive. So do a little math there. But number 2, I think what is also important, we've been talking about what to say in a job interview. HR will tell you what not to say in a job interview. So think about that too. There are things that you shouldn't say in a job interview. You shouldn't ask. And it's important for you in part of this interview and selection training that, to know what not to ask as well as what to ask.
James.
Yeah, I love this presentation, Curtis. Thank you. Just a brief comment, Jen, on the whole thing. Whatever you're hiring for in a business, I'm going to say that probably sales is the number one, the toughest thing to hire for, right? Because for many, many people, if they haven't come through sales themselves, if they haven't run sales teams themselves, for them to try and even figure out what they need in terms of the person is incredibly difficult. And all I can say is that in my experience, going back 30 years of hiring for sales teams, even with the best psychographics, it's still a 50-50 crapshoot. It just is, right? And so I think for smaller businesses especially, sometimes they have to go through a little bit of pain on hiring the wrong people so they can actually figure out what the right person really needs to look like. So I think for Curtis, for your team and how you help them, is helping them get that level of clarity around like what we know what the result needs to look like, but what does it need for a person to get that result, both internally and externally. So I think the sales job is the hardest guy to recruit or gal to recruit for sure.
Yeah. And I'll just say, when you look at somebody's resume and you can see that they worked in sales for the last 20 years and they've been at 4 different companies, that doesn't mean they're a good salesperson. It doesn't mean that they have the skills. And so I think this is a 2-part process. One is you have to do your best in the crapshoot to try to hire the right person. But immediately after you hire that person, you need to have a plan in place to start to upskill that person's abilities. How do I mold them into who I need them to be? And that should be a lot of your process.
So Curtis, thank you for
Absolutely
sharing a lot of frameworks and places to start. I think the job description and thinking about what will the employee be doing to impact the bottom line, which would help pay for them, not just the tasks you need delegated, but really making a structured choice on here's who I need for 2025, 2026. Really helpful. Don't just chat GPT or job description, but really think about who you need and how it can help. What else can we do as a community to help you?
Well, I would just say I love this type of environment because it's not a sales environment. This is about helping first. Zig Ziglar used to say, if we help enough people get what they want, we can have everything that we want. And so my primary goal is to lead in service. I want to help people to avoid procrastination, avoid problems. Because you can do this with the tools you already have. You know, you can go to your insurance broker and you can solve some of these problems if you know what kind of questions to ask. If you want to learn more about how a professional employer organization can help you, if you haven't looked into that before, reach out to me. I'd be happy to just give you some of the same type of general information about the type of work that I do.
Thank you, Curtis. I'm going to hand it back over to Amy to wrap us up through the meeting.
Thanks, Jen. And thanks, Curtis. This was helpful. It gives me some food for thought, and there were a phrase you used, which I wrote down. It's in the chat. It would make a great band name, but it's also, oh, crossed fingers and procrastination, I think was the. So next week, Sue Farrell is presenting Boots to Suits, which, Jen, do you have insight on her organization that you could tee up for us?
Sure. They are a nonprofit. They work to help military transition. And so they're going to be coming to us to get guidance and advice, I think, on visibility and increasing their impact. So join us next week.
Beautiful. Thanks. As I said at the beginning, meetings like this don't happen in a vacuum. So if you are interested in becoming more involved as an ambassador or an organizer, just type me into the chat. Small commitment for a large return. And you can join the lovelies on Monday and have the conversations. Upcoming events. Reston Chamber has golf lessons tomorrow. I wonder if they have a left-handed pro, because I could always use a golf lesson. Also BNI tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Beth, I think you're another BNI person, if I recall. And then a tech talk next week through the Central Fairfax Chamber, as well as a Second Chance Employment Forum. And I believe the QR code in the upper left corner of the slide will give you more information about all of the upcoming events, as well as a few others. Our presenter schedule. So we have next week, Boots to Suits. We have a virtual, that'll be virtual, same as this week. Again, a presenter from EOS. I had to look at that carefully. October 2nd, it appears we have an open slot. Is that correct, Jen?
We do have several applicants, but yes, it's open. So if you are interested in bringing your business and bringing a challenge question, we're here to help. We're very friendly, as you can see. We just let you share your story for 8 to 10 minutes, and then we give as many insights, ideas, ask clarifying questions to help you move forward.
And you can scan the bottom left for a link to the application to apply to present. Follow us on social media. Share your social media handles. We'll follow you back across 3 main platforms. All the links are in one place through the QR code on the slide. If you want to stick around a while and chat, that's never a bad thing. If you have other places to go, thanks for coming and hope you'll join us again.